also known as Shane Bedingfield slash the Texas Torque Wrench, coming to you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, the home of the Fire Ants and now the Texas Torque Wrench. Today's topic has been one that's been troubling me for a while, and we're going to try getting through this and try coming up with some sort of answer to the whole deal, because it's baffled me for a while. Now, I don't know if you people know what the definition of baffled means. Is one of the meanings is confusing. So, because I know that word gets used a lot, but people use it out of context and stuff like that because they're not an educated man like I am. And, because a lot of people have said about me, Shane Bedingfield does not imitate life. Life imitates Shane Bedingfield because I'm a celestial being. I'm an indigo child. I'm a star child. I'm on a completely different spiritual path than a lot of people. That's how come I can talk out about DDP yoga, because I'm above them. I know the meaning of altruistic. Altruistic means you do something you do something and you don't want anything in return. So getting a paycheck there's nothing altruistic about that. Now I do realize the guys gotta eat. Okay, that's cool. But all these pro wrestlers that go around claiming that, he helps. Yeah, he helped at a cost. It's just like being like a traveling motivational speaker. He'll help you at a price, or he or she will help you at a price. It's the same thing. So, okay, but that's a completely different show. I got on a soapbox there. That's the kind of guy I am. I can take a topic and run with it. I'm doing this with no notes. They need to call me the no notes needed Shane Bedingfield / Texas Torque Wrench. I can cut a promo on anybody. So, with that being said, our topic is Vince McMahon, Triple H, and Stephanie got too used to playing second fiddle to the Dana White and the UFC. That is the topic for today, the 27th of January, 2016. This is the deal. Okay, since the UFC has been started, the boys from the WWE and WCW and wherever else have been watching the events. All the wrestlers sort of marked out for them. I ain't gonna lie, because I went and did an MMA fight myself when I was in Texas, but I actually fought in Farmington, New Mexico. That I marked out to them too. Everybody in the business has marked out to the UFC. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Undertaker. Undertaker may be the UFC's biggest mark. So, with that being said, and then you got, it comes into all the whole Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn thing, which this thing branches off in many different avenues. It's not the same thing. It's not the same entity as whenever Vince got crazy and started bringing all the powerlifters in and all that. Actually, one of them was actually pretty good. Um, but it, it's like you you got an entity that's taking away from your product. Because what happens is everybody in the business starts talking about the UFC. Natty Neidhart, whenever Ronda Rousey fought the big red-headed chick, uh, Natty, gave Ronda Rousey a plug. Hell, I gave her plugs. Hell, I was at one time I was trying to get the WWE to tilt towards doing something with Natty and Charlotte, just because the woman thing was getting hot. Ronda Rousey actually did a better job of getting herself over faster with less money than Danica Patrick, because it took a lot of money to get Danica Patrick over, and it took a lot of time. And Ronda Rousey, it didn't take near as much time to get her over once she got to a certain level. I mean, Danica, if it wouldn't have been for GoDaddy, I don't know where she'd be at, because GoDaddy stuck her on everything. Plus, GoDaddy has really, really good taste in women. So, they're not going to, I don't even think you could work as a janitor there and be ugly. So, with that being said, okay, Vince knows, okay, let's back up. Vince knows the entity that Ken Shamrock is. Ken Shamrock looks good cosmetically. He brings him in. He brings Dan Severn in. And at the same time, he's sort of getting beat by the UFC organization. So he's trying to play the deal, if I can't beat him, I'll join him. And, I mean, God forbid, if the paparazzi and TMZ ever catch Dana White and Vince McMahon eating regularly at the same place, at the table, because that will be the biggest story ever. Because they could be exchanging ideas, and on God knows what. It could be booking ideas, it could be angle ideas, or it could be promotional ideas. So, and the Ferraris, because on the UFC deal, you can't forget the actual owners. Those are the actual owners of UFC, the Ferraris, or whatever their name is, are the ones that got the boxing, the fight license for Las Vegas. They're the real, I guess you would say they're the real nuts and bolts behind the UFC. They're the ones that got the UFC to the next level. The shows at Tulsa, Oklahoma and all that, they did good. Actually, I like those older shows of UFC. UFC's got one thing in common there. UFC back in the day, when they had those old style shows, and then up until they brought Carlos Newton and a bunch of them from Pride, even though it's been well documented about Pride being a work that they would possibly, they could be exchanging notes. Let's just put it this way. If Dana White and Vince McMahon and Triple H and Stephanie were all at a dinner together, or all at a topless bar together, doing whatever they do, because that's the deal about the wrestling business. Sometimes the best business in the wrestling business gets discussed at the bar. It's not at some conference room table. Dusty Rhodes did business like that for years. Eddie Graham did business like that for years. I'm sure Bill Watts did the same thing in Mid-South. Fritz Von Erich. The Mantels down in Texas. They all did business that way. That's the way how business was conducted there in the wrestling business. Because one, you could kayfabe it easier. Two, if it's in a loud room, not everybody's going to hear what you're saying, so you could actually backstab somebody in a booking meeting in an ab-lib booking meeting, and not, that guy thinks you're sitting there in a bar talking about a hot chick whenever you really just got done throwing somebody underneath the bus. It's sort of like that scene in Casino when they're out there talking at the bus stop. It's the same deal with the old school wrestling, as far as the booking stuff, as far as discussing business, as far as talking about who's going with who, who's doing what. So, the question was, has the WWE got used to playing second fiddle? Okay, they brought Ronda Rousey in. They did that deal at WrestleMania. But you know who was getting talked about at the same amount of time? Who was an athlete that was getting talked about just as much as she was. And in the off season of the NFL, they never touched J.J. Watt. They could have done the Lawrence Taylor thing with him, dropped him into a show real fast, do their thing. See, they got a chance. They could have done it this year, but see, J.J. Watt ain't being talked about near as much as he was. You drop him in, you let him do the Lawrence Taylor thing. You don't have to necessarily put him over. You could almost end it in a draw or in a Broadway so he can come back and then do it again. And that way they passed up on J.J. Watt, and God knows why. That was really, 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 really bad thinking. But I think Stephanie was the one that brokered the deal with Ronda anyway, put all of her eggs in one basket and said, we're going to go after her. And then that gave her the storyline to do the deal with the Divas, which Total Divas started getting over a little bit better whenever Ronda Rousey came in. So, because it's like, I don't know, even though she never made an appearance on the show, but at least got the people thinking about the women more. It was like done in a subliminal way, I guess you could say, because, you think about it. It's like Danica Patrick. I always like using that example because she's had so much money behind her. And that's part of the equation on the women deal. And you cannot tell me at those booking committees meetings that they're not seeing what's going on in the world of sports. When Serena Williams gets hot in tennis, Naomi of the WWE needs to be going over. That way, at least be on the top of the card, or at least be, she's got to be getting seen at a bigger capacity. When Serena Williams gets hot, Naomi's got to get hot. And that way, it sort of looks like it all gels together and the people get used to seeing it. I've said many times that what's going on in the regular television set, on regular television broadcasting, has a direct correlation to what's going on in the wrestling world. Now, I'm not saying they ought to bring actors in and put them over sort of thing, but I'm saying, though, is you take from one to give to another. You rob from Peter to give to Paul. And that's how you draw money. And then on top of that, you need a big heat situation. Because the heat is really what draws the money, but it's everything else behind it. It's like everything in wrestling, everything's works around perfect timing. And see, that's how come the WWE messed up with J.J. Watt, because they put all this emphasis on Ronda Rousey. They played to Dana White's hand instead of turning it into a promotional war, a pay-per-view war, which they should have been doing. Because I've said, with Conor McGregor, if the WWE does not go after him, go after Dana, turn this into the biggest damn war ever. Because one, the WWE is the establishment as far as sports entertainment. They're the establishment. They can make the rules. The biggest argument also about, Conor McGregor made that stupid Jesus quote saying that he could whip Jesus in a fight. And on top of that, he used foul language, even though he used some of the language that Stone Cold Steve Austin used. And which, at the same time, Stone Cold used some real, in prior history against Jake the Snake, Stone Cold used some stuff against Jake the Snake where it put Stone Cold in a very, very bad position. But I'm sure Vince told Stone Cold, just like Vince told Shawn Michaels in the screw job, I'll take the heat. But the boss doesn't take the heat. It's just like Shawn Michaels said in one interview. The proverbial it rolls downhill. So in other words, on the whole UFC Conor McGregor Jesus quote, it's going to come back on Conor McGregor one way or another. On top of that, the conspiracy theorists could have a heyday with Conor McGregor if they really wanted to. I mean, it doesn't take, you don't have to be the greatest computer wizard in the world. And now granted, I am the internet. The internet evolves around me. Mark Zuckerberg asks me all the time, hey, what do you think? You're larger than life. What do you think about this? Bill Gates, same way. Warren Buffett. I mean, the world evolves around me. So, if the conspiracy theorists on the whole Illuminati / the occult doesn't use that to go after the UFC, and then the WWE turns around and capitalizes on the conspiracy theorists / the people, chasing down the occult, if they don't go after, capitalize on them going after them, then they're used to being mediocre. They like being second. They're losers. Because it's just like in the pay-per-view war, the first loser is the guy that's second. And number 3 is boxing. Because boxing can't do nothing right. They don't even pick out hot ring chicks. I mean, it's just like, they're clueless. If I was doing a boxing show in Vegas, I would go out of my way, because there's a really, really, really hot, here it comes. There's a real hot poker player named Tara Rice that lives in Vegas, that's blonde. If you don't have people like that showing up to your events, you're never going to get over. It's like whenever you do stuff, it's like WWE has no business going to Vegas just because they can't do a show on the Strip because Vince can't, I don't even think Vince could get in on the Strip. That may be, there's 2 places where Vince McMahon is not allowed. Well, 3 places. The Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, and the Strip in Las Vegas as doing a show. As far as I know, I may be wrong, but I don't remember ever a wrestling show outside of AWA being done on the Strip. And I don't even know if that show was done on the Strip. I know it was done in a casino, but it wasn't one of the most popular casinos at the time. If you looked at where that show was booked at, it wasn't done at exactly the place that you want to brag about doing a show at. So, with that being said, okay, Vince has got used to playing second fiddle. He's given Dana White pass after pass after pass. He hasn't came down on him yet. I don't know what their actual pay-per-view numbers are proportion-wise, UFC compared to the WWE. I don't know the crossover. That was an argument that whenever I was wrestling the first time in North Carolina, the argument was that we did a show one night in the same building that the MMA people were doing a show, and supposedly there was going to be crossover. Well, we had two people show up the next week, which that was a whole weird story right there. That whole deal in Hickory, North Carolina is sort of like, if I would give a wrestling lesson, that's the lesson on how not to do a promotion, even though they put me over in it. But as far as payoffs and as far as things getting done right, and it was too big, let's put it this way, there was entirely too much emphasis on the lights, on a $10,000 light bill, and not literally a $10,000 light bill of show lights that never got paid off, and not enough emphasis on the boys, not enough emphasis on the way some of the people were dressing, not enough emphasis. There was just a lot of stuff going down. And, actually the building costing too much, because the building cost rent was so much that it took away from the promotional efforts. And if you cannot ramsack a town every week that you're doing a wrestling show, you might as well go out of business, because first off, you're not going to get over. Second off, none of the boys are going to get paid, and the boys get paid no matter what. I'm a big believer, if a promoter doesn't pay the boys, steal his popcorn machine, slash his tires, have sex with his wife, and then throw his wife out of the house. I don't care. The boys get paid no matter what. I mean, that's just the way it is. I'll never will cut down Tennessee wrestling because of that, because no matter what, I got paid over in Tennessee. So paying's paying. You cannot expect the boys to go out there for nothing. And if nowadays, especially in the South, there's so many shows that are getting done that it's hard to have a house that draws $10,000, just because there's so many shows getting done. So, with that being said, okay, MMA's draw, is basically, they're taking away the crowd, and all these promoters, including Vince McMahon's, got used to saying, oh, we'll get crossover from them. No, the whole wrestling industry as a whole, and because Vince McMahon co-signed Undertaker's BS, he co-signed Stone Cold's BS, and he's basically co-signed his daughter's BS and Triple H's BS by letting them come in and be part of it, letting some of the UFC workers come in and be part of it, and not really know any retaliation. Now you got Conor McGregor running around, running his mouth, and saying stuff that's really off the wall, giving Vince McMahon, and it's still Vince McMahon's show, all the ammunition in the world to take back what's his. And he won't do it. So, with that being said, I've already told you my game plan. If I was the booker, if I was on the booking committee at WWE, I would be pushing Vince in the corner at a swimming pool at his house in Stamford, Connecticut, and saying, look, if you want to win this, we got to use Brock better. And we got to use Brock on a one-time deal where we can take this thing back over. But we got to have our eggs in a basket, because when we go to Dana White and say, listen, we want to do a press conference, we want to book a fight 1 month from now, the only catch is Brock's wearing the WWE belt then, we push him in the corner and say, all right, 1 month out, we book it, press conference, another press conference at the weigh-in, and then do it, and then time it whenever Brock can beat a guy That way it gives Dana no time to maneuver, because that's the whole catch on the deal. The less time, Dana has turned it into wrestling. He's on TV too much. He's on TV. The Ultimate Fighter, I've had resources tell me that they booked the Ultimate Fighter show real close to the way that they booked Tough Enough. In other words, if you couldn't talk, you didn't get an invite back. The Ultimate Fighter is the same way. I heard that I was, because last summer I trained some guys MMA-wise, but the only thing that wound up happening was it got me really studying some other martial arts real good again, because I'm such an entity in the martial arts world. But if you back Dana into the corner, like that scenario I just said, I just got through giving you Vince McMahon the formula to take over the pay-per-view war, take over the whole pay-per-view show again, be the most talked about thing ever. And the thing about it is, it comes across as being a partnership, but no, it's not a partnership. It's a way to take Dana White out. What you do is you push him in the corner, you use Brock Lesnar as a pawn, and say, okay, let's have this argument on who's the most legit, wrestling or UFC. Because since Jim Cornette and everybody says UFC's pro wrestling from the 1970s, only problem is if the UFC guys can't cut a promo, that's all you have to do. There's the formula, Vince. I just got through giving you the formula. To back him in a corner. The only deal is Vince, because of his daughter and because of Triple H, has got used to being second. They like being second. They like being the loser. Now, all you wrestling fans out there, hear me. He likes being the loser now. He loves it. So, but it's the God's to honest truth. Vince McMahon and the WWE is the second fiddle. They're the first loser outside of boxing in the pay-per-view war. They need tennis to go pay-per-view every once in a while, just so they won't look like such big losers. Because the less people, the less entities that are in the pay-per-view, it makes the WWE even look worse. So, with that being said, I've laid out the facts. The WWE likes playing second fiddle. They got used to losing. They won't use the tools they have. They will not use cutthroat business tactics. And if they did what I just got through saying by backing Dana White into the, I guess you would say, the booking corner, where he's forced to play his hand out faster than when he's used to playing his hand out, playing his cards, you have him. And it comes down to a timing deal. Because the only reason why I'm using Brock is Brock's always ready. It wouldn't take Brock very long to get... Brock's one of those kind of guys that can be ready in 2 weeks. So, I've laid out the facts in this show. And thank you for all my great listeners. Yesterday sort of got cut off sort of weird because I was on a timetable. But that's the facts. And the spin stops here on the wrestling business.